friends, how's it going? It's me, Betty Jean. So we're just gonna talk about some products that at one point I really wanted and now I'm very glad I didn't buy them. Whether it's just because, really it's just because I don't feel like I would have ended up getting enough use out of it and it probably wouldn't have been worth it to me. So that's all I have to say. Let's just get into it. I don't really have a better explanation on what we're going to talk about. Quick disclaimer before we start, because if I don't give a disclaimer, someone's going to get angry with me. If any of these products I talk about are products that you love and adore and you have and you use, don't get offended that I didn't buy it and that I'm glad I didn't buy it, because I'm not even trying to necessarily trash the product. It's more just, I was trying to talk sense into myself on why I don't need it in that moment. So just don't get offended. It's not a big deal. I'm happy that they worked out for you. So the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking of the products that I was going to include in this video was the LA Splash Classic Horror Collection. Around Halloween time this past year, they launched this whole kind of classic horror themed collection. Basically, I already said that. But it included an eyeshadow palette. It had like 10 liquid lipsticks, like at least 6 pairs of eyelashes. I feel like there might have been something else, but that could have been it. It could have just been the liquid lipsticks, eyeshadow palette, and lashes. I wanted it so bad because I was in such kind of Halloween vibe because it was that time of year. I already love horror movies regardless of the time of year, and it just spoke to me so much because of the theme. But at that moment I just did not have the money to spend on the collection, and I didn't want to buy just one thing because I really wanted everything and I couldn't narrow down just a couple things that I wanted. And now looking back, I'm glad I didn't get it just because it was expensive to get everything. I know I wouldn't have gotten enough use out of the palette. I would have used it for a couple videos and that probably would have been the end of it. The liquid lipsticks, I'm sure I probably would have dabbled into using here and there, but it's not something that would have been absolute have to have staples. And the lashes, I'm really picky about what lashes I use because they need to be very fluttery and flippy and whimsical. And the ones I'm wearing today are actually very short for my liking. I'm just trying to get use out of them so I can just get them out of my collection forever. But I probably wouldn't have ended up being worth the money for me to spend that kind of money on the collection. The next ones are 2 items from Kat Von D. The first was the Satan's Sinner palette. It was the one that was kind of shaped like a stained glass mirror. And I liked it in theory just because I thought it was cool that it had that really cool mix of colors. I actually didn't mind the kind of sporadicness of the colors because to me that just kind of inspires I don't know how to explain it. It kind of inspires weird color combinations, and I'm all about weird color combinations. And I really, really wanted it, but I ended up not getting it. I even asked my mom for it for Christmas that year, and I ended up telling her not to get it because I didn't think I wanted it enough. I'm really bad about asking for gifts. I don't like people to buy me things because I just feel really weird about it. But I ended up not getting it at all, especially because the price was high. It was, I think, pushing $60 for the palette. And I just knew I wasn't impressed with her formula too much in the past to spend that kind of money on the palette now. Wow. People are literally racing down my road. But I'm glad I didn't get it because, like I said, the price, but then I kept seeing reviews on the palette and people were very displeased. And again, like I said, I already knew I didn't love her formula. I did like the Pastel Goth palette, but all the other ones I was just kind of like, at that time. So really, I'm glad I didn't buy it because it was a lot of money. It would have just taken up space, and now I don't use Kat Von D products, so it really would have just been an overall waste. The other thing was the Alchemist palette, that little triangle with the 4 highlights in it. I wanted it for a minute just because I love a good colorful highlight, and I really loved it back then. I don't use it as much now, but I loved a good colorful highlight back then, and I thought it was so cute. It was pretty pricey for the pans that you get. They were like this big, like eyeshadow size, and it was advertised as a highlighter palette, so I don't understand why they were so small. And it looked pretty when I swatched it, and it looked pretty when I saw it on people, but I don't think I would have gotten enough use out of it to justify it. I think it would have just taken up space. It definitely wouldn't have been something I used every day, so I'm glad I didn't buy it, needless to say. This next one is a recent one that I was really excited to get, and then I felt very let down, and I'm glad I didn't get it because it wouldn't have been worth it, is the Melt Blueprint Stack. I was so excited because we saw the blue coins, I don't know what to call it, the little discs in their stacks. It was blue packaging. Melt Cosmetics has done really cool stuff in the past, so I was really hyped. Like that radioactive stack was beautiful. I haven't tried anything from Melt Cosmetics yet, so I was like, this is going to be the first thing I buy from them, and I'm so ready for it. I expected the most beautiful blue stack ever. And they revealed the first 2 shades, and they were going to be split pans, so that would mean there was going to be 8 shades and not just 4, which made me even more excited. And the first 2 stacks with the 4 shades were beautiful. They were the prettiest shimmery blues ever. I think one of the blues was a matte that and I was here for it. I was ready to buy it. Like my credit card was in my hand. And then as the days and weeks or whatever, how long it took for them to finish the reveal, they did it and it was just bronze. The other 4 shades were just bronzes and it was very boring. It looked very reminiscent of that Urban Decay Beach Break palette that came out a couple years ago in my opinion. It was just not there for me. It fell very short. Only 2 of the shades were mattes, the other 6 were shimmers, and half of the palette was bronzes that I wasn't going to reach for. I'm sure I would have used them in the palette itself because they would have been there, but I didn't want to spend, I think it was close to $50 on half of it just being bronze shades that I didn't need. And really I didn't need the blues either. I just really wanted to try that brand. And I'm very glad I didn't buy it because that would have been a very expensive waste of money. I would have used it for one video, I guarantee it, and that would have been the end of it. This next one are all of the NYX In Your Elements palettes they came out with. I want to say 2-ish years ago. They had earth, fire, air, water. There was like a bunch of different ones. I don't remember what they all were. But there were I think 6 palettes and they were so pretty. I loved the color stories of them. They were so cute and they had all these different influencers partnering with them to show all these really pretty looks. And I was just feeling the vibe of those palettes. I wanted all of them. And this was back before NYX started producing more expensive things, so everything was still very cheap. So I was like, sweet, this is gonna be like $15 a palette and I'm gonna get all of them. I'm pretty sure they ended up being $30 each, right around that ballpark. Expensive for those palettes for it being NYX Cosmetics. It was so out of the blue. And at that point, I was just kind of like, I don't know which one to buy because I can't buy more than 1, maybe 2. And I really wanted them all because I thought they would be cheap and I thought they'd be cute and fun. And I ended up not buying any of them just because I wasn't spending that kind of money and I wasn't sure how the formula would be because I'd never paid that much money for NYX before. I wasn't sure if the quality would match the price. And looking back, I don't remember what people said review-wise. But I'm glad I didn't buy them. I don't feel like I would have gotten enough use out of them. I'm sure I would have played around with them here and there. I'm sure I would have put them in videos back then, back when one person watched my videos, and that was myself probably. It just would have been a waste of money, and I'm still really bitter about that. I don't understand why they did that. The next thing I want to talk about is the Ciate London Glitter Flips liquid lipstick. They are basically a regular liquid lipstick. You put it on, wait for it to totally dry, and then you go like that, smack your lips together, and then it's glitter. And I thought it was such a pretty idea. They had a bunch of shades. I wanted them all so bad. I knew I wanted at least 1 or 2. But every time I popped into Sephora and I swatched one and thought about it, I was like, oh no, I'll get it next time, I'll get it next time, I'll get it next time. And then it just got to the point where I didn't really want them anymore. And I'm glad I didn't get them because I don't really think I would have used them that much, maybe once just for fun. I'm pretty sure Raw Beauty Christy got one, and she said that the glitter kind of flaked everywhere and made a huge mess throughout the day, so really I would have been annoyed. So I'm glad I didn't get those, but I really, really wanted those for a hot minute there. Next is the Urban Decay Kristen Leanne palette. I don't remember the name of the palette itself, but it was the one with all the colors and it was kind of disorganized as far as the shapes of the pans. I didn't want it at all, and then I wanted it really bad, and then I didn't want it, and then I wanted it really bad, and then I gave up the idea of having it because I just didn't want to spend the money on it. And I'm pretty sure the time I was going to actually potentially buy it, it wasn't in stock. So it just kind of didn't happen. And then more of you guys actually kept telling me I needed to have it. And I even went to, I think it was Nordstrom Rack online and saw that it was really cheap, and I almost did it, but I ended up not doing it. And I'm really glad I didn't because I probably wouldn't have used it for more than just one video. And at that point, it'd been out for a long time, like many months. So I don't feel like people would have even cared to hear my opinion on it just because it's old news at that point. And I really didn't like the layout. I don't like those disorganized, weird pans and palettes. Like, it needs to just be crisp and clean and look good. Like, you can still have fun colors and it be more organized. I don't know. I don't think I would have gotten enough use out of it. I feel like that's the common theme with all of these. I just don't think I would have gotten enough use out of it. This next one I wanted so bad once upon a time. Back when I was first watching YouTube videos about 4-ish years ago, I started watching Jaclyn Hill, and she would always rave about the Tatcha Luminous Dewy Skin Mist, and I wanted it so bad, but especially back then, I could not afford to pay $80 or $90 on basically a skin mist, but I wanted it really bad. I wanted it for a long time, and now that I'm at the point where I technically could buy it if I really wanted to, I wouldn't be buying anything else for a minute, but I could buy it. I don't want it at all because the Pixi Glow Mist does the job for me. It gives me that glowy look and it's way cheaper. And I'm just so glad that my naive makeup loving self from a couple years ago did not spend that kind of money on that because it just would not have been worth it. That is a ridiculously expensive product and there are so many other options that are cheaper. Next is the ABH Soft Glam and Sultry palettes. I'm just going to include both in this because I do have a tendency to want to buy all of a collection. Like I've been collecting the Anastasia palette, so I really wanted them just to include in that. And I really wanted Soft Glam for that mulberry shade. I thought that shade was really pretty, but really for the most part I did not need that palette. I don't wear neutral eyeshadows hardly ever, and I knew I wouldn't have gotten any use out of it other than maybe for a video. And same with the Sultry, like I really wanted that, I think it's called Bloom, that really cute coral color, but all the other shades I didn't need, and I know I wouldn't have gotten enough use out of it. And to spend about $45 on a palette, and really in this case $90 for 2 palettes, I'm just glad I saved that money. I'm glad I have the Riviera palette, the Subculture, the Prism, Modern Renaissance. I'm glad I have all those, but I'm glad that I don't have Soft Glam and Sultry. If I were to ever be gifted them, I wouldn't be mad to include them in my collection, but I definitely don't need them, and I'll never be spending money on them. And I'm glad that I talked sense into myself to not buy them because I'm surprised that I didn't talk myself into buying Soft Glam, honestly. This last one I actually talked about in my palettes I wish I would have bought video, but I'm actually going to include it in this one as well because at the time I really wanted the Morphe 35E palette, and I kind of explained this in that video too. I'm glad I didn't get that one because while I liked those rows on the right of the palette, I wouldn't have really used the rest of it. I would have used it for probably a first impressions, maybe a 3 looks 1 palette, and then I wouldn't have really touched it ever again. It would have just sat there, kind of collected dust until I decided it was time to declutter it, and then I would have given it to a friend. So it just would have been a waste. It wasn't that expensive. It was around the $22-ish zone. You get a giant palette, but it just wasn't worth it for me to have in my life, and I'm glad I did not end up buying that one. Especially because the 35M released right after, and I did buy that, and I love that palette with my whole heart. I don't love giant palettes, and a lot of that one I still deem kind of boring because there's lots of browns, but there's a huge chunk of that palette that I adore, and that palette performs beautifully. But anyways, that's enough of that. So these are the products that I wanted at one point, and now I'm glad I didn't buy them. Looking back, I was definitely fine to not have these. And honestly, there are so many things in my collection now where I'm like, you could have lived without that, you could have lived without that, you could have lived without that. But I'm not totally rational when it comes to buying makeup. I'm getting better as I age, but it's okay to have things just for the sake of having them. You can still collect things, it's fine. But these are just some products that, yeah, I'm glad I went without that one. I would love to hear from you what products that you wanted once upon a time and now you're really glad you didn't buy them. Like I said in the beginning, don't be offended if some of the products I talked about are your favorites, and then don't also in turn try to convince me to buy them anyways, because I'm not buying any of these products. That's the bottom line of this video. I'm not buying any of those. I let them go and I'm glad I don't have them. But don't be offended if there's some of your favorite. I'm happy that you have them and I'm happy that they work out for you. If you enjoyed this products that I didn't buy and I'm glad video, please give it a thumbs up. I've been enjoying doing these more chatty videos, so give me your suggestions down below. I always screenshot the ones that I really like from you guys, so let me know which ones you want to see. If you're not already, please hop over to my Instagram. It's beautbean. Follow me there. I post every single day, and don't forget to subscribe here before you leave. I post 5 days a week, every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Let me know what videos you want to see on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.